Welcome to the Missouri Instructional Leaders Network, where we bring together Missouri instructional leaders to share their experiences, grow professional relationships, and build curriculum and instruction skills. My name is Valerie Montgomery, and this morning I'm here with my colleague Sue Herrera. She has become our village expert on the science standards. And this morning, she's going to share specifically what she has learned about the K-5 Science standards. So Sue, I'm going to let you take it away.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. I am, as Val said, I don't know that I'm the village expert, but I certainly have learned a lot since joining Step Up. I'm the director of instructional development and a consultant for Step Up. And I've had the privilege of working on K through 12 science scales. And I'm going to speak directly today to the K-5. So Val, am I sharing or are you?
What would you prefer?
I prefer you to share, honestly.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you very much. And, you know, as we're going through this, you are more than welcome to unmute and ask me questions or make suggestions. You're also welcome to use the chat, whatever's more comfortable for you. Val will kind of watch the chat and feel free to stop me as we go through, okay? All right, Val, I think we're ready. The goal for today is just to overview these new science standards that Missouri has pushed out and analyze the progression of those science standards, to share a couple of DESE updates that are interesting about science, and then to take a look at the new Step Up Science Missouri Assessment and Teaching Tool book, give you a little preview of what that's going to offer educators. So the new science standards are aligned to the next generation science standards. And they take into account that we still need this disciplinary core in orange. We still need to have all the physical science, all the life science, all the earth science content, which when I was a teacher, that's really all you taught. If you didn't experiment with it, you were cutting edge. You were just like making your mark. But the new standards bring together what we call our science and engineering practices and our cross-cutting concepts. And so when we talk about the cross-cutting concepts, it's really the attempt to show kids how do all these standards fit together across all the domains by looking for patterns and cause and effect and scale and proportion, structure and function. And then the science and engineering practices, which you see here in blue, is an attempt to help students think like a scientist. So we want to think like a scientist, see all the patterns throughout the science standards, hooked to the content, which educators have always known in Missouri. Something unique about Missouri is that while we are aligned to the NGSS standards, Missouri has decided to add some standards. So there are times when you may be looking for resources for a Missouri standard that cannot be found in the NGSS because Missouri has decided to take a larger standard and break it apart. I found that as I was researching and creating the K through 5 science mats, that sometimes there just wasn't a lot of resources out there because it was Missouri specific. Okay, Val, we can go on. I'm going to share a little analogy with you that I got from Kristen McKinney, who's done a lot of work for DESE with science. She made an analogy, which I'm going to call food for thought. So we all like to grill out. Sadly, it's not that time of year. But that disciplinary core idea, the one that we always know we're going to teach, like matter or habitats, that's the meat of the meal, right? That's everything to us. That's what we've taken time to pick out from the butcher, and we're going to make sure it's the best it can be. But we're going to add some spices and seasoning to it, which is your cross-cutting concepts. And the way in which you're going to cook it, the tools, the way in which you're going to present it is what we call our science and engineering practices. And then how you're going to put it on the plate, ready to enjoy the meal, is our performance expectation. So this analogy really shows how those standards are set up for the state of Missouri. So within our Missouri Assessment and Teaching Tool Handbook for Science, here's what we've tried to do for educators. And I just want to point it out because it's a way to think about the standards. Here's a typical 5th grade standard, and we have color coded it because we want people to be able to see where's the SEP in this, which is the science and engineering practice, where's that cross-cutting concept, and where's the core idea. So I immediately, as an educator and a teacher most of my career, look at the orange, saltwater and freshwater in various reservoirs, about the distribution of water on Earth. And then the cross-cutting concept is to provide evidence. And then we're going to think like a scientist by describing and graphing those amounts. And then this is directly off of the item specs. This is directly from DESE, so you don't have to go reference that document. It's all right here for educators, so they can see how that 3D approach fits together. So we're going to just take a little peek here inside the MAT book, because I want you to know what we're offering. This would be that daylight one on grade 5. We're going to have some vocab that is specific to process thinking, and then we're going to have content vocab. And DESE does not provide science terms yet. These are terms that at Step Up we have deemed important to the standard. There's your color-coded standard, the clarification statement from the item specs. Again, this is from the item specs. And then we have a 4-point scale. And in the 4-point scale, the 4 is always the grade level above or the advanced. So here's the standard, but here's what it might look like at 6th grade level. And then there's the assessment type question. Val, we'll let you go on real quick. So within a typical Step Up mat, all of our mats are formatted the same way, but for science, it's really important that educators understand the proficiency target. And so here is the unwrapped standard that we just referenced: make observations during different seasons, relate the amount of observed daylight to the time of year. And these stars indicate further unwrapping, which is different than what was at the top of the mat, at the top of the scale on page 1. This takes into account the possible evidence on the item specs that Department of Ed has given us, and allows educators to take a deeper dive into what are they really asking me to do. And then on the right side, we've put the content boundary, so you know just how far, where's the ceiling, where should I stop in my teaching and student learning. And then on this right side, these are sample stems from Department of Ed, from the item specs. And then on this other side of our screen, we continue with the item specs, and we've gone further to give you any evidence that we have on DESE of released items and the scoring guide. So from those 5th grade assessments. And so here's some screenshots of what would be included. You know, I know as an educator, I'm always interested to know, what is it that DESE offers, or what is it that we have aligned that I could even look at that would help me understand how is this going to be assessed, especially since we only assess it at 5th grade and 8th grade. So this is a map release screenshot, and then you've got the shortened URL on the page before where you can actually click on it and go to the actual document on the website. And then we drop down to a level 2, because I don't know if you've looked at our science scores lately. At a state level, children are just not reaching proficiency at a very high rate. And so the level 2 allows educators to drop down. What are the skill gaps? What do we see that we're missing? And so we've got some vocab that they might have missed in years before. And then we've taken skills and we've said, okay, this would be closest to proficiency, and we've unwrapped it going all the way down. We provided some videos. We've researched, our writers have researched and researched and researched to try to bring together the very best resources for Missouri educators. And then on the right side are some examples of what it could look like for students if you're trying to bridge that gap for them with some assessment type questions. I want to stop and talk to you about these vertical progressions for science, because I always knew as a principal and an educator that there were gaps in the standards, But I had such an aha moment when I was looking at the vertical progressions. So Val, can you click on that vertical progression for us? This is our overview document where we have taken the broad strand and we've looked at the progression, and then we've broken it down even further. Let's look at, let's go ahead and look at ecosystems, Val, the big one. Yeah. So you got your vocab at the top, and we're going to scroll down. Okay, I'm gonna have you stop right there. I want you to see that this particular standard, if you don't know, is not addressed at kindergarten, is not addressed at first grade. The first time students see it is at second grade. We don't touch it again in third. We don't touch it again in fourth. And in fifth grade, we teach it again, and then they're assessed on it. And they're going to build on it. Val, if you'll scroll down, they keep building upon this concept 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. So what happens, if you'll scroll back to the elementary grade, what happens, and this is a hypothetical question, what happens if at fifth grade we don't get to it? Or what happens if at second grade they never get to it? And the first time children hear about this particular standard is fifth grade. It's a house of cards. Everything kind of falls in on itself, right? And you know, I know as a principal, I hate to admit this, but you know, there was a time that we were saying to educators, you got to teach kids to read. It's great if you use some science to teach it, but we've got to teach kids to read and write and do math. And so on your instructional schedule, often you'll see that science and social studies are kind of an afterthought. At the end of the day, maybe 30 to 45 minutes. This vertical progression would suggest if we do that and we don't get to it, our children are not starting to think like scientists. They're not seeing the patterns, and they're certainly not getting to that core concept. Thanks, Val. So we do have a new product. That's not necessarily the purpose of this call, but I will tell you, as a writer for Step Up with the Science, we have really struggled to find high quality resources that are specific to Missouri. And so this is a Missouri specific product, and it is robust. There are lots of anchor charts and lots of resources for educators. But I think the main takeaway that I want to talk to you about today is just the fact that the standards are so performance-based, and the phenomena that they want educators to use in order to set up a lesson and launch a standard is new thinking for educators. It is not something that we have done before. And Desi, we met with Jocelyn Strand on last Monday, and we recorded the session, and she shared some really great information with us. And one of the things she shared with us was that, you know, our new MSIP MSIP 6 is giving educators and school district credit for when students show progress. And they've not typically done that in science, but they are going to do that in the upper levels for science. They're going to be looking at how well kids score in 5th or 8th grade and then giving credit for that improvement. I asked her if they were going to if they were going to drop down to elementary and look at it that way as well. And she said not yet, but they would be getting there. So having a really firm understanding of the vertical progressions and how the science standards grow and are assessed over time is going to be even more important, since we're going to be getting points when we show progress, when our students show progress in science. I am going to just take a breath for a moment. Sarah is on the call as well, and she has worked on science with me. She's been adding a lot of the screenshots of the Missouri assessment and the MO-LEAP blocks where we found alignment. And I'm just going to pause and see if anyone has questions or anything that's working for you that you want to share when it comes to addressing this 3D approach with our science standards. Maybe we could do this. Could you put in the chat where you're from and what grade levels you serve? That would be great. Do that real quick for me in the chat so we just know who's in the room. And Val, once those get entered, if you'd be gracious enough to read those, we'd appreciate it.
I'm going to, for anybody who wants, I'm not going to play the video. This video with Jocelyn Strand, I will put that in the chat if you have time, if you want to see the entire update that she gave us. There are some tidbits of good information in there that it's pretty critical to know. So we have Julie as an IC. Julie, where are you from? And then we have Sandy and Ginger are from Hollister.
Okay.
Julie is from Bell City.
Nice.
I do want to forecast for everyone. Thinking back, Sue, you were saying about how often science and social studies, they usually get pushed to the, well, if we have time. And thinking back to when I was in elementary, IC, that was the method of operation, was like, well, if we get time, or maybe we'll fold it into ELA. But I want to forecast for everybody that we're actually putting together a course. It's going to be, I think it's 8 modules to help people understand how the NGSS are structured, how to plan a learning cycle, how to assess. So the map book is very helpful, but if you want to go deeper, or your teachers want to go deeper on understanding the NGSS, we're going to be pushing that course out through Milne Pro. So like James, I know Wellington is a Milne Pro member, so you all will have access to that. So I'll make sure to, I'll send you a direct link so you can get to it. In the chat, definitely struggling to find science resources for elementary, trying to do as much integration of social studies and science, but it is tricky.
Yes, and I will say that my experience as a writer creating the Missouri Assessment and Teaching Tool scales, well, it was humbling, and I almost feel like I have now a minor in science, I'm going to be honest with you, because you're researching, and the inclination or the go-to is to just look for that core content. Like if it's water cycle, just looking for water cycle, and you have to really back up and remind yourself it's deeper than that, because they're not necessarily going to be assessed on just the parts of the water cycle and how it affects the earth. They're going to be assessed on, could they create a model of it if that's how the standard is listed? Or could they analyze data that you've collected? And then if the cross-cutting concept is patterns or cause and effect, you've got to make sure you're teaching that as well, which we know that patterns fit into math, cause and effect fits into reading. We know that these skills can be integrated, but it's more robust than just having kids read about the water cycle to integrate it into ELA so that you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's really what you're doing with it. How are kids thinking? What are they doing? And do they understand the why behind it? So you really have to shift your instruction to make it performance-based. If kids are sitting and reading about a content, they're probably not doing the 3D approach or the next generation standards that Missouri wants us to do. So we're shifting. So when I see school districts on Twitter and I see kids are in the hallway and they're launching rockets, immediately I'm interested, because I'm like, they're doing the performance part of it. I bet they have clipboards and they're collecting data. That's the SCP part. They're thinking and acting like a scientist. So that was just one thing I always thought of, is how's this going to look in a classroom? How's it going to sound in a classroom? How are kids going to feel about the science when they're done with it? And what do we know about kids in science? It's one of their favorite things to do. They get really upset when they know there's a science experiment or activity coming or a lab, and then we have to cancel it or push it aside or wait till tomorrow. They're very, very disappointed. Yeah. So I saw that we said that we're struggling to find resources. What resources are we using right now? Does anyone feel comfortable to share or put that in the chat for science? Just learning from each other is what this is about. I know at the school I just left, we used Discovery Textbook. What other kinds of things are we using?
It looks like Project Lead the Way.
That's great. Wonderful.
Sedalia, I believe.
It's very strong. Yeah. I've looked at the Missouri alignment on that as well, and it's strong. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but it is definitely strong. So Inspire Science. Okay, great. I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to look into that one. So whether you have a strong resource or not, the science map book K-5, whether it's digital or it is the actual hard copy book, is going to provide Missouri educators first with clarity, because they're really going to understand what is that 3D approach for science. And then it's going to provide educators with a snapshot of proficiency and how is Department of Ed going to assess that. And the anchor charts and videos and sample stems, the questions, it's really powerful. I was amazed every time I would get done with a mat or I'd review someone else's work, just the depth that was there. It's almost a full-time job. You could just be a science teacher at the elementary level, right? It's a lot. It is so much, but well worth it. I mean, I want our students to be able to think like scientists. I don't know about you, but I'm getting older, and I really want the children of today to be scientists that are able to research and come up with a cure for something that's going to ail me as I get older, I'm pretty sure.
And just want to add, James mentioned that their text is printed around 2007, which is, you know, not uncommon.
Pretty common.
They're using Mystery Science, and that teachers are having to get very creative on how they put together their performance events. James, I don't know if you know this or not, but you all did order the K-5 Science mats, so you'll be getting them. You're among the first districts to be getting them in January. So I hope that helps your teachers a lot, especially if we get you access to that course. Maybe your teachers can, you know, have that as a companion to the mat and can really dive deep into the standards.
So when you get into the map book, or when you look at the vertical progressions, which you can get to on Department of Ed, it's not something that you have to have from us. But when you get into that, you're going to see that, especially in the book, you're going to say, oh, here's the priority standard. And then K1 doesn't have a page because it's not a standard there. The first one you'll see is second, and then it may jump to fourth, and that's it. Very few, it's not like reading or math where it's real sequential every year, and there might be a gap every once in a while. You're not going to see K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like you would in a writing standard. There really are going to be a lot of gaps, and we've reflected that in the way that we have organized the book. Yeah. Molecules to organ structure and process. So it starts with plants and animals mimicking how you would use external parts to survive. We didn't see it at K, not at second, not at third. We're going to see it again at fourth. And here we want you to construct an argument about it. Where in first grade, we were just using materials to design a solution. Same content, but here we want you to compare and contrast at fifth grade. We're looking at systems here, which is your cross-cutting concept. And we know that this is where they're assessed, right? At fifth grade. So in the map book for this standard, you'd only have first, fourth, and fifth. And then we would pick it back up with our 6 through 8 book, which we're almost done with. Yeah. Thanks for showing that, Val. That's great.
Yeah. It's interesting. It really gives you this sort of macro view of the standards.
Well, and Shauna, the president and founder of Step Up, Shauna and I were looking at the vertical progressions, and we know the standards fairly well. And it was a huge light bulb moment for us to see the progression of the standards, and a real reason as to why we've struggled to fill the gaps in science.
Okay.
Yeah, so check out the Jocelyn Strand link that Val put in the chat, because it's not just about science, it's about MSIP 6 and what they just released today. Was it today or last week?
Today is the day. She said Monday we'll be releasing the APR reports. So
and it's secure. It's not made public yet. It'll be made public, I think, right before the winter break. But you got to use your secure login to get to it and look at the rankings and everything. Yeah. That's all I have about science. Val, did you have any other things you wanted to plug on the network before we say goodbye?
I just wanted to let everyone know, well, first of all, thanks for coming today. I know our schedules are busy and it's the busiest time of year. But let's see, this is tomorrow. We have more folks from DESE. We have Lisa Durking and Chrissy Bashort. They're going to give us some updates on the social emotional learning standards. And then Thursday, this is a sort of a follow-up to our reading success plan. I think it was about a month ago. We had a reading specialist on, Jessica Gray. She's coming back on Thursday to tell us more about the progress monitoring process that they're doing in her district. We've had a lot of districts needing help and support with these reading success plans. So, and then this is a ways away, but in February, we will have another client collaboration. And this is an opportunity for Step Up clients to come together to really hone in on the implementation of the products and just learn from each other. So mark your calendar for those if you can make them. And again, thank you so much for coming this morning.
Yes, and we hope that you've heard something today that will help you better understand the science standards and how Missouri has used the NGSS. And if you need help with your science standards, you don't need to look any further than your Missouri Assessment and Teaching Tool Science book. We'd be happy to help you with that. If I was a principal, I would be jumping on the reading plan call, because she is an expert, and we've gotten great feedback on the information that she has shared. So quality for the network for sure, and for educators. I hope you have a wonderful last couple of weeks of school before the holiday.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.